Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar in our Informed Voices Media Literacy series. We are delighted to have you join us for an engaging discussion on a crucial topic, fact-checking and verification techniques. My name is Shalala Mamadli. I'm a secondary school English teacher, a visiting lecturer at the Faculty of Journalism at Baku State University, and one of the founding members of STEP Azerbaijan, Society for Teaching Excellence and Progress. Joining me as my co-host is Mr. Mudassar Majid from Pakistan, a media in charge professional and a visiting lecturer at Faisalabad University. Together, we'll be guiding you through the event tonight. It's a great honor to welcome our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Renee Hobbs from the University of Rhode Island, USA. She is the director of the Media Education Lab and a leading expert in media literacy. She has authored 5 books and more than 150 published articles, created award-winning educational multimedia, and offered professional development programs to educators on 4 continents. By the way, she visited our capital city, Baku, 9 years ago for an UN conference and has fond memories of Azerbaijan, making this an especially meaningful discussion for us today. Before we begin, a few important notes. Those who attend at least 4 out of 6 webinars in this series and successfully complete the quiz at the end of each session will receive a certificate from STEP Azerbaijan. We encourage you to actively engage by sharing your thoughts and questions in the comment section. We'll address them during our question and answering session at the end. And now let's dive into today's topic. In a world where misinformation spreads rapidly, the ability to verify information is more important than ever. So Professor Hobbs will guide us through essential strategies for evaluating sources and becoming more informed media consumers. Dear Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you and your colleagues. I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation tonight. For the last 40 years, I've been helping teachers in elementary and secondary schools incorporate the activities of critical analysis of media and media production and creativity into American public schools and schools around the world. So I am very much interested in the topic of propaganda and disinformation, and especially in addressing the growing political polarization that's happening here in the United States, of course, but also around the world. What role can critical thinking about media play in an increasingly polarized world? And if you're like me, you are also exploring the opportunities and the challenges of artificial intelligence and generative AI. These are also tools that can be used for good or evil. So all of these topics are, of course, important to me as a media literacy researcher, teacher, advocate, and as a parent too.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And definitely, we warmly welcome you in this webinar. And definitely, the audience that who will be connecting with us, definitely they will be gaining a lot of information, knowledge, and definitely they will be feeling happy to gain knowledge from you as well, because this is a webinar most probably shared in Azerbaijan as well as in Pakistan. So a lot of people in Pakistan said they're also watching this webinar, and they are also the people who are associated or attached with media, and definitely they will be appreciating the way you will be talking about the importance of media literacy and all that. In this regard, a very first question I will be going to ask, and I'm going to ask that is, what role do the fact checking and verification play in fostering media literacy in today's digital age? What do you say about this question?
Well, I wish I had better news on the topic of fact checking. I wish I could say fact checking is super effective, but actually, there's a lot of reasons why fact checking is, while valuable, of limited effectiveness in addressing the problem of disinformation and propaganda. The first issue is that fact checking takes time, but we are scrolling and swiping so fast, right? So fast. But by the time the fact checkers have done their work, I've forgotten all about it. Actually, the misinformation is already
Yes,
stuck emotionally in my head. This is a problem. So that's a major issue for fact checking. It's not instantaneous because fact checking requires research and time. So fact checkers are fighting a uphill battle. Another challenge with fact checkers is that fact checkers believe something that the rest of us know is not really true. Fact checkers believe that information is what people use to make decisions and take action. And they believe that very strongly. Most journalists do, right? But psychologists, media psychologists, and psychologists, and just everyone we know, facts don't change people's mind. Feelings do,
definitely.
relationships do. So, in some ways, what we do when we go about the process of liking and swiping, right? Looking for information, is we're attracted by feelings. And then whatever those feelings are, maybe they're outrage, maybe they're anger, maybe they're surprise, maybe they're delight, right? Then we work backward from our heart to our head. But the
Definitely, definitely.
heart is what's leading us as information consumers. And so I think sometimes fact checkers think that people are all dealing with information in their head. And it's like, well, but don't forget about the heart, because that's how people actually go about the process of using information in daily life.
That's superb. That's great. One who is just following this webinar, and definitely it's great significance and great importance and great and the I would say knowledge that is just floating and going on in the form of flood. The knowledge that you're just sharing. So really appreciate the way you gave answers and the way you shared your information by giving the answer. That's superb, superb. So, Madam Shalala, over to you. That's what's the question that you would like to ask over here.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to ask how we as educators can empower our students to critically evaluate the reliability of information that they come across online.
Yeah, this is a very good question. What skills and knowledge do students need to be able to do that important job of evaluate information? To answer this question, I would like to show you a page or two from my new second edition of my textbook called Media Literacy in Action. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to take you to the website. I think you might be able to see it now. Is it true?
Yes, I got it.
There
Yes.
we go. Good show.
Yes.
So one of the things that's important to do to be able to verify, authenticate, evaluate information is to really understand the whole process by which it becomes useful to analyze information. So the media literacy learning model that I'm displaying to you now shows that there's really a 5-step process. Analyzing comes in an important way as we make sense of the world as it's presented through media. First, we need the skill of accessing information. That requires digital skills and inquiry and search and curation. Then we want to develop those skills of analyzing information. That's comprehending the information. That's the critical thinking, and it's assessing the credibility of the source. But we're not just information consumers these days, we're creators. So we have to think about, what do we do with the information we've gained and the perspectives we have? Well, we want to create media as well. And that's by activating our curiosity, our creativity, and often by collaborating. And for information to have meaning, it takes time to reflect on it. And that requires thinking about our emotional response, engaging in dialogue and discussion with others, and engaging in ethical reasoning. And then the final step in the media literacy learning model is like doing something, taking social responsibility, becoming an active citizen, and maybe even picking an issue and trying to make a difference in the world. So the process of verifying credibility is actually deeply interwoven with this whole circle of media literacy learning. But we like to emphasize this idea that the process of evaluating information means asking questions that fall into three big categories. The first set of questions is asking about the author of the message and the target audience, with questions like, what can we infer about the author, purpose, and target audience? How does context shape how the message is interpreted? And how do economic and political systems influence the message? Well, the message form and the message content. So helping students to internalize a set of questions about who made this message and who's receiving this message, thinking about purpose, interpretations, and systems is super important. Then the second set of questions has to do with messages and meanings, right? Asking questions like, what production techniques are used to construct the message? Why does it seem credible, right? If it's got a photo, a headline, and a name of an author, that may look more credible, even though it's not, because that production technique that was used to construct the message might be tricking you in some way. Maybe the font or maybe the language use. You might be using that to judge credibility. And we know that isn't always the best way to judge the credibility of a message. Thinking about the values, ideology, and points of view that are presented in the message. Sometimes those are easy to spot, but sometimes that requires inference making. And then the third question here in this middle pod, how does this message affect knowledge, attitudes, and behavior? How is it affecting my understanding, right? How is it challenging my understanding? What effect is it having? Finally, we like to teach students three questions that have to do with representation and reality. And these are the questions that really get at that issue that you identify of assessing credibility and truthfulness. The first question is, how is this message a selective representation of reality? Because in media literacy education, we say all media messages are selective and incomplete. There's no way that a media message can represent the full complexity of a topic. By the very act of making media, you are choosing to include some things and omit other things. So noticing omissions can be a good strategy for identifying the credibility of a media message. And so can looking for stereotypes. The question number 8, how can stereotypes, narratives, how are they affecting my interpretations? And then the final question, what makes this message seem trustworthy and credible? That's really thinking about how it is that we decide who and what we can trust. So when we internalize those 9 questions, then every time we encounter a message, we're thinking about who made it, who's the audience, what techniques did they use to make it, how are they selectively representing reality, what's their values, ideology, and point of view, and then what interpretations am I making in order for this message to have an effect on my feelings, my thoughts, my attitudes, my beliefs, or my behaviors.
Yes, I know.
And
Yes, Mr. Mudassar. Connection problems.
okay, okay. Yes, that's going on. Okay, yes, I'm just asking that the next question that is about. Yes, might be, but right now it's stable now. So next question that I'm gonna ask that is what are the most common red flags to watch for when determining whether a piece of content might be a fake or misleading, or in this way, what can we do in that particular situation?
Yeah. Yeah. What are some red flags to watch out for? Well, of course, this issue of authorship is very, very important. If you get a media message and you can't figure out who made it, that's a red flag, right? And in fact, we encounter a lot of messages where we're not really sure who made it, right? Maybe the
Yes,
name is not, who is
definitely,
this person, right?
definitely.
It's why one of the most important techniques you can use for just being a media consumer is whenever you encounter a message, go take the extra 3 or 4 clicks to figure out who is this author and where are they affiliated with. That's not hard to do. It just takes a little extra time. So the red flag is if you can't find the author, then you should be
Mhm.
suspicious. A second red
Yes.
flag, a second red flag is you really want to pay attention to stuff that activates your strong emotion. You know, this is one of the most recognizable techniques of propaganda. I wrote about that in my book, Mind Over Media, Propaganda Education for a Digital Age. Propagandists know to activate strong feeling, you bypass critical thinking. So whenever you feel outrage, excitement, joy, delight, belonging, satisfaction, then you actually want to ask, how did they make me feel that way? So that's the technique question. Like, what was it? Pictures of small children, right? Was it horrible pictures of violence and blood and crime, right? What did they do? How did they choose content that created this effect for me? And then you want to ask about their values, ideology, and their points of view, which is the why do they want to activate my strong emotion? Is it for information? Is it for entertainment? Or is it for persuasion? And so that red flag of whenever your feelings are activated doesn't necessarily mean the content is bad. In fact, most of the media we consume is activating our pleasure, right? That's what entertainment media does, right? But then we want to look at the deeper purposes because a thing that looks at first on TikTok like it's just funny might actually be persuasion. And you have to really pay attention to that. And what's the third red flag? What's the third red flag? Well, anybody who tells you that they can detect fake content by, whoa, there's a finger missing. He has 6 fingers instead of 5. The color looks off. I don't like this. Those superficial markers, they are not that trustworthy. We actually have to evaluate media, we have to actually know something about the topic. So, for instance, I'm not very knowledgeable about climate science and the environment. So, I'm vulnerable to misleading content and propaganda about climate science and about climate economics because I don't have very much background knowledge. I can't evaluate the content very well. I have a lot of knowledge about education. And so I can spot fake news on education topic really easily because I have a lot of background knowledge. So the red flag is to be aware of your own blind spots, right? About where you might be tricked on topics where you might be more easily tricked. And then also the topics on which you are resilient and strong because you have a lot of background knowledge.
Yes, definitely. Over to you, Madam Shalala. So, what would you like to ask next question?
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to ask the next question. With the rise of AI generated content, such as deepfakes, how can we still stay vigilant in verifying the authenticity of videos or images? Is it
I don't
possible?
think we can. I don't think we can. However, I do think there's an antidote to that. So this is a moving target, right? Even just in the last year, deepfake technology has come very, very far. Voice cloning, woo, it's phenomenal. So the advice we would give 2 years ago wouldn't be relevant today because the technology has changed. And any advice I would give now would be outdated instantly. But when you yourself have used generative AI to create media yourself, that gives you tremendous insight, first of all, on how easy it is. And second of all, on like how it's actually made. So we think that learning to use generative AI technologies to create media is a good antidote to some of the vulnerabilities, some of the ignorance around this technology and how easy it is to create what I call an unreal reality. Just think about it. Everyone around the world, in cities big or small, in country and rural areas all over the planet, can create unreal realities easily. So that once you let that sink in, then you realize it's really about choosing to be socially responsible as a communicator, right? Choosing to share only content that you believe to be true and choosing not to put your playful fakes out into the world. So that issue of raising people's expectations about their own responsibilities to be responsible sharers of information, this is perhaps the only antidote to the deepfake, generative AI, unreal realities that are all around us today.
That's superb. That's superb. Really, fantastic answers that you have given in the context of the question. It's really, marvelous by giving a helpful examples that are, that effectively express the things that need to be expressed. So, madam, in this regard, I would like to ask another thing, that is, how can individuals differentiate between credible journalism and propaganda or biased reporting? Because it also matters a lot. Biased reporting has become a common trend these days. Everyone start doing it according to his own, wishes, according to his own will. Whatever he feels or she feels good, according to that, he starts reporting. So at that time, how can we get whether it's the credible journalism or whether it's a propaganda? How would we differentiate?
What a great question. And again, I am so sorry to disappoint you. I am sure my answer will not be satisfying. I think those of us who grew up or who were trained in the 20th century, right? We are older, right? We were taught you can trust journalism. It's unbiased and credible. I was taught that. And so I have my New York Times right here. I'm still reading the paper copy, right? Because I am a child of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. But that reality that there is unbiased journalism and then there's propaganda, that's no longer an accurate understanding of the way the world is now in the 21st century. What we have is people, authors, with a range of different motives and purposes. And sometimes their purposes are complicated. Like, for instance, the New York Times purpose is to inform, but it's a business. It also has to make money, right? And it does that through investigative journalism and through focus on conflict and controversy and through selling ads to rich people, right? To elites, to people in power who want their worldview to be represented. Is it the
Definitely,
truth?
definitely.
No, it's not all the truth. It's representing a particular understanding, a selective representation of reality. So it's more productive rather than think there's like journalism at the top and propaganda at the bottom. It's more useful to think about how there are authors who have a range of different complicated and intersecting motives, and they're not always transparent about their motives, right? So the New York Times doesn't broadcast, we need to make sure jewelry companies will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to put their jewelry commercial, their jewelry ad in the paper because they know rich people read the New York Times, right? No, they're not going to say that, but I need to know that to be able to evaluate this journalism because the New York Times has biases. Its bias is in favor of rich people and the interests of rich people. Now, they aren't going to broadcast that. They're not going to say that out loud. That's not in their propaganda, but I need to understand that. So understanding the economic structures that underpin bloggers, vloggers, TikTokers, influencers, and mainstream journalism are going to be really important to differentiating, maybe not between journalism and propaganda, but between the interplay of information, persuasion, and entertainment. Those are the complicated nuances we now must untangle.
Yes, definitely that it is. I agree with that because it's very hard to get some sort of things, as you have mentioned earlier about that, New York Times at that time, they like to show, because these days I guess that people are selling their things in the different newspapers and different TV media and mainstream media, social media, everywhere. That has become a business rather instead of that pure posting. So business, they feel that business is a business and cup of tea is a cup of tea. The person who would provide them some sort of assistance, some money, something, definitely they would be, making them a top headline. And those people who are not giving a single penny, so they won't pay. They won't add that, even though that whether it would be crucial or, but still they feel that this is not their, the main purpose because their main agenda is to do what? To grab money. So
Yes,
getting money, yeah, this is the main point. These days in the 21st
absolutely.
century, it has become a common trend that rather whomever you want to make to blame or start making use of fake allegations, so you can put forward by your own wishes by using fake reporting, by the yellow journalism is as it speaks nowadays. Whatever it is, it's really very. Sometimes it becomes really hard to judge whether it is a credible news or whether it is a fake news. So sometimes it really gets hard to find out the information. Sometimes even though those people, and I just want to mention over here that in different places, like in Pakistan. So if I would like to mention an example over here that if there is a Pakistan television in which everything which is being broadcasted according to their own ways, even though if the reality is something different, but they are just trying to enforce this identity that this is the exact story, and the people who are watching that and they get the things as it is, that whatever that is being displayed on television, so that is the exact story, and whatever the other televisions are being displayed on commercial television networks, so they are fake news. So in this way, those people who become the get associated strongly, rather that is a fake, but still they believe that that is right. So this is somehow brain playing with the brains and all of those people who are just watching that thing and they feel that that is a credible, and whereas the other things which are being displayed on other private channels, so that are fake. So in this way, that is also going on not only in Pakistan but also in a lot of other countries. The same things are going on. So
Right.
this is these days media is being controlled by the governments. Now just because of that, the governments of every country, they are the people who are just trying to control even not only government channels but also private channels. They are also trying to control the newspapers these days. whatever the it is not something like information leak. They're just trying to get the information, whatever they, even though whatever the information they are going to share, all the information are just gathered, and then they feel that they should need to share this information, not that information you are giving. So that time, whatever the people who are sitting over there, they do whatever they want. So these
Right.
days, everything is being controlled. Everything is
Yeah.
being controlled, and I guess that
But just
that's being
because
made.
But just because government is controlling doesn't make it bad. Okay. So we want to resist that kind of resist the sort of good, bad, either or thing. Take, for example, so the New York Times is a for-profit business. It makes money through advertising. It has a bias that reflects people who are elites. What about another one of my favorite news sources, Al Jazeera? Al Jazeera is controlled by the government of Qatar, right? By the emir, right? And yet it doesn't rely on advertising, and it has what I would consider to be very high quality journalism, right? And so it actually, we need to understand the economic context in which information, persuasion, and entertainment are coming to us, but we need to resist essentializing the sources. We have to really approach the process of evaluating media in a larger contextual way, because sometimes the point of view that is offered by government is actually correct, right? So sometimes it's important not to oversimplify. It's actually, the big aha is really just acknowledging these are authors. Sometimes, can you believe it? I trust a blogger more, right, than I trust the government source of news, because the blogger has some lived experience that's really meaningful and relevant to me, and I trust that the most. And we need a better understanding of how we are influenced by influencers who have no power, right, and no money either, really, sometimes, but who appeal to us through what they call like charismatic authority. It's their personality that has its own kind of credibility. And this is a topic that media literacy educators must address, because a whole generation of children and young people are drawn to influencers who they find very compelling and attractive, and they don't know why they find these people so believable. Well, these are things that we must engage in dialogue and discussion. So I just want to share with you one tool that we have been developing at the Media Education Lab for that. I'm sharing my screen with you now. I think you can see it. It's a project called Courageous Rhode Island. This is a project that uses media literacy and active listening to reduce the fear and hate that leads to violence. Because when we disagree, we can argue and we can get angry. And actually, what we really need to do is take time to better understand and listen. So we created a series for teachers, a set of courageous conversations on topics like why media literacy matters, preventing violent extremism, high conflict. What is high conflict and how can we dial it down using active listening? Conflict entrepreneurs. What do people need to know about social media economics and the profit motives that underpin conflict? Feelings and facts. Why do stories, characters, and conflicts change mind? The influencers. Free speech, hate speech, and censorship. Targets of propaganda, and falling down the rabbit hole. When you click on this link, you get the discussion questions, the lesson plan, the slide deck, the video summary, and you even get to listen in on a courageous conversation to see what happens when people have conversations about the places where propaganda can be found, right? So here's somebody talking about the pandemic.
Yes, some of them, they were claimed to be like a propaganda. That was just in different
Exactly.
countries. Yes.
So I think there are plenty of resources and tools available for teachers to help students realize that only through dialogue and discussion can we approach the truth. And you know what? That's what the Enlightenment thinkers told us in the 18th century, 300 years ago. They said, nobody has capital T truth. Together, through dialogue and discussion, we discover a shared understanding of reality. So dialogue and discussion is a core instructional practice of media literacy for this reason.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So over to you, Madam Shalala. So what's the question that you're having in your, right now in your mind?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share some comments from our audience. One of our Günel Hanım, she says, that's why we must rely on news on public TVs and reliable newspapers. And one more person, Elçin Mirza, he says, Al Jazeera is the only news channel I watch frequently. And I wanted to ask about, we know that we have some tools, some websites where we can fact check information and verify sources. But now I have some strange thought. Can we rely on them? Can we rely on them? Are they effective enough?
It becomes, I guess, it becomes, difficult. Whether whether you are supposed to rely, whether they're just trying to change your identity mindset, because sometimes they are trying to change your identity. Whereas I feel they change their identity according to their own, preferences. Whatever they have, their own preferences, they try to show it off. So that is a common thing and common understanding nowadays. It has become a common trend. Whatever you want, try to enforce in the mind of the kids and the people and the young people, and through the TikTok, through the influences and different. So these days, it has become, these days, the governments and different, institutions and different, countries, they are playing with the mind of the people. These days, it is being the game is being, in which they are just trying to make them play. That here you need to do this. Here you need to think this. They like that. Here you need to think this. Here you are not supposed to think that. So these days, they are, our thinking is also in the form of chains. So we are in the form of chains, that what we have to think and what we not have to think. So it is up to them. That it is nowadays the development of 21st century is all about that. These days we just are talking about these days about chat GPT and as well deep stakes at that time. But the things are over there, and to find out what the content there is in the deep state, and what the content is over there in the chat GPT. And at that time we always try to find out that information, and later on we get some idea that they are almost similar. There's some idea, but there is a hype is created in the mind of the people that there is a lot of difference, and there is a lot more information more than that of a chat GPT. So then this way, this is what trying to play with the minds of the people. They're trying to change the identity by creating a stuff over there on different mainstream media, social media, creating a hype. That is these days it is being done, and that is very much on the top these days. Whereas I feel, according to Madam Shalala's question, I have responded. So, Madam, next, if you would like to, discuss over here, if you would like to add something more, Madam, so you can add.
No, I thought that was a very good point. I think it's important to realize that our sense of personal and social identity is constructed primarily in the family, right? In our family and in the neighborhood. I'm from Michigan, right? A state in the United States. And my identity has been constructed from my parents, right? My church, my community. What's complicated right now is that now, thanks to this technology, look at this. My community is getting bigger and bigger. Here I am talking to a Pakistani and an Azerbaijani. Wow.
Yes, definitely,
So
that.
the
I appreciate it.
opportunity for us to enlarge our sense of identity as citizens of the world is why I'm so very optimistic about media literacy as it relates to the big arc of history, the long arc of history. As much as things are so difficult right now, the long arc of history is moving us toward more cultural understanding, more respect for differences, more appreciation of our unique cuisines and hobbies and joys and delights. So just as my love of reading has brought me to inhabit the thoughts and feelings of characters and personalities from parts of the world that I will never visit, this is also possible with media. And so we want to help students not to be afraid, right? So that's why we called our project Courageous, because we were like, you know what? There's a lot of ways to activate people's fear right now, and the rapid pace of change makes everyone fearful. But really, at the heart of it, we want people to be intellectually curious and to be hopeful, to appreciate that if we take the time to be skillful at critical thinking about media and at being responsible in creating good media ourselves, then we can actually build a shared understanding of people who live different lives and who are in different parts of the world, and we can actually build bridges of connection. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So I'm optimistic.
Definitely, we should be optimistic as well. Definitely, because technology is also providing us change, just get connected. At the same time, we can also get we can have access to the exact information if we explore some of the things, more vividly, and definitely we will be able to get the exact information. Sometimes some of the shallow information that is floating somewhere, but here the people who just want to go into the deep down into the things and definitely just start following the exact information. It depends upon the people that whether they are so comfortable with the fake news or whether he is just trying to explore the more and more exact information or not. So it depends upon the people as well. Whereas I feel so as we are talking about information, misinformation, and disinformation and all that. So here in this regard, I would like to ask over here that what advice would you give to someone who encounters misinformation within their community by struggles to practice without creating conflict, because if we start making cracks with people, there can be a conflict. At that time, how can we make them, make on the right track rather without having a conflict?
Well, isn't this the most important question? Because now some of these conflicts happen not just with strangers online. Well, with strangers online, yes, these conflicts happen, but sometimes these conflicts happen within our families and within our communities with people we care about. So one thing we found for sure does not work, so don't do it, is don't tell people they're wrong. This does not work. It turns out that when you tell people they're wrong, this only deepens their belief that they're right. So don't do that. What does work is to ask open questions that you genuinely want to know the answer to. So questions like, why do you think that? Right? Tell me more. Because all of the psychological literature on how people change their minds can be summarized in a single sentence. When people feel listened to, then they can listen to others. When people feel heard, then they can listen. Our minds open when we feel respected. So when you demonstrate respect, even to the conspiracy theorist, the vaccine denier, the person who thinks that the 5G towers are radiating them, Right?
Definitely,
If
definitely,
you can
definitely,
demonstrate respect and
definitely,
say,
definitely.
tell me more. Why does this matter to you? Then people feel respected. Then they open a tiny window to the
Yeah.
idea that they might be wrong. And you know what? I need to do that too. So I always say to my students, I feel 90% certain that the Israel Gaza ceasefire that was announced is like it's reported. I feel 90% certain that it is true, but I keep open a 10% window that I might be wrong. Because once I keep open that possibility that I might be wrong, then I have something to learn from somebody who has a different point of view.
Definitely that it is. But sometime, just suppose if there is something over there on, on social media like Facebook, like X, like in LinkedIn, or any information is over there. These days, people are trying to do what? Trying to find out the comment to get the authenticity or, exactness of the thing. And a lot of people who just used to say that please do some comments in the favor of them, so that the people who are going to get the view of that they will start conceiving that that is a real authentic thing. Suppose I want to get purchase online thing, and I just want to purchase. I just want to get some reviews and start reading the reviews, and just I just got it from that. All the reviews are in the favor of that person. How can I get the credibility of that thing? Because it's really difficult for us to find out. So that time they are paid reviews, which
Yeah.
are over there in the form of comments, and it is hard for me to judge out the authenticity of that, the credibility of that thing. So how can I judge that in that particular situation?
Well, this is a really great question because I don't know the answer to that, but I do know what can be the negative consequence of coming to believe that you can't trust anything. You can't believe anything. This is very dangerous. So we have to guard against the tendency to throw up our hands and say, well, I can't trust the reviewers. I can't trust the journalists. I can't trust the bloggers. I can't trust anybody. That leads to despair. That is not healthy and it's not good for society. So what is better is to say, I make a choice. I make a choice to trust this reviewer, even though I make a choice, right, to trust. And when we become more intentional and self-aware about deciding who and when to trust, then we feel a sense of agency
Mhm.
and empowerment, and that feels really good, right? So make a decision about who and what to trust, have some reasons for it, and be willing to admit that you might be wrong.
That's it. That's it. That's great. So here is a comment that I guess we live in the world of fake. Are we living in the fake world? So that it is, people are just start commenting in the comment section. But here I would like to add one thing more over here that these days people, when they talk on suppose if I get connected with the people on social media and start talking with that, and he's using filter on that, and at that time he just start talking, and they start doing conversation, and later on they decide to get married. And that time when he or she comes over there to arrive to pick or arrive to the airport to receive, so that time they find out that is not a person whom we have been talking. Before that, they have been talking online. So it happened today in Pakistan. So there was a female from USA, and she got married in Pakistan. So I think so. She's already married and having two kids over there. And what happened that she used to use some of the different type of things over there, and just like as in the form of beauty cosmetics or whatever you can say filtered. Most probably they use filter, and that time it would look very beautiful and all that. And suddenly, what happened over there? That when he went over there to receive her, and she was a Negro and having something fat, something like a very heavy type of female with him. He has been talking. She said, "Yes, you have called me to come. You are over here to receive me." So I said, "No, no, I'm not going to receive you. The lady whom I'm going to receive, that is somewhere else. I'm looking forward. She might be coming. She said, no, no, I'm your girlfriend, and you have to get married with me. And right now, that is a big news in Pakistan these days. And she is just trying to find out him or somewhere because he ran from there. I said, I'm not gonna get married with you because with the whom I've been talking. So that was a very beautiful lady. And right now, with you are not someone like that person with whom I get married. So that these days, mainstream on social media, it is very common. And she is saying that without that, I won't go back. I want to get married by any means. So she is there these days in Pakistan. So this is because it becomes just because of that they have been talking on TikToks or something like on social media, Facebook. So they just start chatting and contacting, and later on what happens we can see. So real world is something else, and imaginary world is something else. Or fake world is also somewhere else. In this way, hard to get find out the reality, what the reality is, because sometimes it becomes really difficult to find out the exact reality of the thing. It's what the real thing is. The real world is.
Well,
I have,
yes.
Go ahead.
I have some interesting thoughts and comments from the audience. For example, Sarjan Sadigova, she asks, if a false story goes viral and is later corrected, why do many people still believe the original misinformation, and how can we resist this effect?
This is a very this is a good question, because research tells us it's very, very hard to disrupt the first impression. And you know why? Because for millions of years of human evolution, our survival depended on trust your eyes, trust your ears, look around, and formed a judgment of reality based on that. So we are hardwired to, once it's in, right? And it's also the case, and I've tried to teach my students this for 40 years, but they can't learn it because it's so difficult to do. I say, try to remember the source of where you learned it. Did you see it on Facebook? Did you see it on TikTok? Did you see it did your mom tell you, right? But the natural tendency is for humans to do what's called source stripping. Once we encode the information, we forget where it came from, because for millions of years of human evolution, the only way you got information was from your eyes or your ears or your touch. You didn't need to know, was it my eyes told me it? Was it my ears told me that? It didn't matter, right?
Yes.
So we can suggest these techniques, but we also have to be humble about the biological mechanisms we will not remember the source. We will not be able to easily alter something that's true. It will take a lot of extra effort. I think this is why educators appreciate the importance of lifelong learning. We're not just teaching students between now and the time they get their degree, right? We're teaching them habits of mind to be able to be learning and relearning and unlearning. This is a topic I expect will get a lot more traction in education in the years to come. Unlearning. What do I have to unlearn in order to be more effective in this world? And how do I go about that process of unlearning? So right now we don't have much insight on that, but I think that's a topic that will grow and grow.
Yes.
That's
As one more person from our audience suggests, I suppose we must also teach our students how to check reliability of news sources. But for this, first, we ourselves must know about Media Literacy Lab, which you mentioned. So
please visit the mediaeducationlab.com and explore all the resources and materials that we make freely available. Also, I welcome all of you in the audience to join us for our webinars. Most of our webinars are free and online, as we are talking about we are learning ourselves as faculty, as a global learning community. So teachers must be learners too. And that's why you're here. So isn't that cool?
Definitely. I feel the teacher should be curious enough to know about the more and more information, and they need to update the knowledge by getting more and more accurate information, by getting contact by like professors like you, as both of us, Madam Shalala and me myself, is trying to get connected with you just to find out some of the knowledge, expertise, and information that what the things are over there in USA and what how we are using of those types of information, in which context we are just trying to deliver that knowledge, in which ways. So this is all about that, just trying to getting connected. Basic purpose of this connection is just to find out the exact information and what are the basic things which are going on these days. So we got really great, sorts of inspirations, expertise, the knowledge that we have shared. It's really, authentic and credible as well. Appreciate the way you have given answers by just trying to, by adding some of the things which we have over here in the form of slides. So really helped a lot. And the people who are just watching this webinar, definitely they will be gaining some information, especially if people are, educators are taking interest and they're trying to ask questions. And definitely you have given wonderful answers of those questions they were asking. So it's really superb and superb, I would say. It's the whole credit goes to Madam Shalala, that she has arranged a wonderful educator, professor, Madam Rain, that she is over here, and it's really superb. And this is somehow about that, and about me, it's all about that. But about the question that I have asked, right? So it's ended from me. And Madam Shalala, if you would like to say anything more, and you can add something, you can add. Right?
Okay. Do we have anything more to say? If not, I would like just to thank our dear guest for her contributions.
Yes,
For
definitely.
this
Really enjoyed.
insightful
Really enjoyed.
session. Yes, I just want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made this webinar a success. First, a big thank you to our guest speaker, Professor Renee Hobbs, for sharing her deep knowledge and thought-provoking insights. Her expertise has not only enlightened us, but also inspired us to think more critically about the media we consume. And I also want to express my appreciation to my respected co-host, Mr. Mudassar Majid, for his valuable contributions and support in making this event so engaging. And finally, of course, a huge thank you to our audience, because it's their active participation and thoughtful questions and engagement that make this series so impactful. And what can I say? Wishing you all a wonderful evening and looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful, wonderful discussion that was. And I hope so that the discussion would be very fruitful for them and would gain a lot of information from that.
Bye.
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 Goodbye.